A young girl, Sarah, age 13, walked down her road. She was on her way home from school after track practice, still in her uniform, black hair pulled into a ponytail, blue and white shorts, and a half shirt. So it was starting to get dark. The sky became a dark red, purple, then black. She hated walking home this late, but it was only 3 times a week after track practice, so she didn't mind as much as she should have. If only she'd known. She walked along using her cell phone as a flashlight to see what was ahead in the long, dark streets. She jumped. What was that? She'd seen a long, dark figure. She turned and saw it was just a car. Phew. She walked along the sidewalk, breathing heavily from the scare. The car slowed next to her. The door opened. Hello? Get in. What? A hand reached out the door, grabbing her shirt and pulling her into the car. No! She felt a rough, callous hand hold her mouth shut. The other arm wrapped over her waist and held her arms down. Shh. The arm wrapped around tighter until she couldn't breathe. Her chest felt tighter, her throat ached. She choked for breath, and then everything went dark. When she awoke, she was on a metal table, her arms and legs strapped down. She tried to call for help, but her mouth was duct taped shut. She made as many muffled screams as she could until a man walked in. Shh, child, you're okay. She stared at him, failing to conceal the fear in her steel gray eyes. The next few hours, I advise you don't read about them, as they were terrifying and all too real. He rubbed her thighs and chest, ran his fingers through her hair and licked her neck. Stop! Please, no! She tried to beg through the duct tape. After he had enough, he went into another room for a moment, and Sarah let her tears fall over her face. She sobbed, letting go of all the fear as she had concealed it. If he'd seen her weakness, he would have fed on it and used its energy to continue satisfying himself with her body. He walked back into the room. He had some tools with him. They were all sharp and wide. No, help me! She tried to yell. He left cuts on her wrist, blood flowing all over the table. He cut satanic marks into her face and stomach. The pain was unbearable. She sat screaming at the top of her lungs, hoping she would die already or someone would save her. She had no idea what was coming. He picked up what looked like an ice cream scoop, smiling evilly down at her, and then dug it abruptly into her eye. She screamed louder than ever, the pain unlocking more sounds from her throat. The man whispered gibberish noises over the blood-soaked body. You bastard! She tried to scream. She thrashed under her restraints, trying and failing to ignore the pain, which brought her back under submission. He dug harder into her eye, drawing screams from what felt like her soul crying for help. Then she could feel it. The eye wasn't hers anymore. With her one functional eye, she saw it plop on the table. It had veins popping out, a pink cord coming from the back. Her pupil was dilated, and it was soaked in blood. She screamed at the gruesome sight, throwing up all over the side of the table. It was too much. To see all that had been inside her, blood and her eye, being ripped out and drained by someone who thought he had the right. He picked up a large butcher knife and began to cut open her side. She could see her lungs, her rib cage, her intestines, and her stomach. She threw up harder, and between throw-ups, she shrieked. The man calmly put down the knife, waved goodbye, smiled his evil smile, and walked out. She slowly died on November 8th at 10:56 p.m. Her soul arose from her mangled corpse and she flew. Whoa! She flew high above the clouds, and a voice said, "You have two options: heaven or living on earth." Sarah scoffed. Heaven isn't real. She rolled her eyes. If heaven was real, God would have to be real too, right? She demanded the voice. God doesn't exist. If he was real, he wouldn't let me die like this. So no, I choose to reside here. She dropped back down into the room she died in. She stared at her body. Her shirt and bra was removed. All of her blood was stained with particularly dry blood. Her eye was sitting in a heap of its own veins and blood. She picked up the eye and shoved it back into her skull. She had revenge to seek, but she had one thing to do. She had to leave her family behind now. That she had no choice of, but she should at least check on them. She walked down the unfamiliar street. She longed to know where she was so she could go to her home and whisper good night into her little brother's ear, as she did every night. She closed her eyes tightly and thought of her little brother, learning of her death, the tears, and screaming he would let go. She opened her eyes and saw that she was in the hallway of her home. She walked down the corridor to her brother's room. She tried to grab the doorknob, but her hand went through it. Well, shit. She held her breath, closing her eyes and walked straight into the door. She opened them and looked around. She'd gone through the door into her brother's room. She kneeled next to the bed and kissed his forehead and whispered, "Good night." Then she remembered her vengeance. She thought of the man and what he had done to her and what she wanted to do to him. Kill him, torture him, let him feel her pain. She opened her eyes and there he was, sitting at a table with his family. She sat in the corner, watching the conversation. "How was work?" "Great, I picked up something for you on my way home, honey." He held up Sarah's necklace. "That filthy bastard." "Oh, it's beautiful." Sarah watched bitterly as he put it over his wife's neck. When everyone was asleep, she sought out her revenge. She snuck into his kid's bedroom. She tied them with duct tape and brought them to his bedroom. She tied him up and his wife, and woke them all. "What? What?" he exclaimed. "I know you can hear me, you bastard." He jumped. "What?" She laughed. "Remember me? Remember how you took out my eye, violated me?" His eyes widened with utter shock. "Now, it's your turn." She held down his kids and made the man watch as his children were tortured to their demise. She tortured his wife, strangled her with the necklace, then came him. She pulled both of his eyeballs out. With all the blood pouring over his body, she held his face under the sink, making him choke for breath under the water. Then she cut his body and left him to bleed. She took all his family's eyeballs, screwed them all over the metal cord, and hung them up on his bedroom door, blood dripping from them. She haunted the house for the rest of her days. When a new family moved in, she sought to kill all of them. As a warning to leave, she would put her eyeballs on the bathroom mirror. Usually that was enough, but if they ignored that, she would write in her blood, "Leave now, or meet my fate." Usually that works too, but if they're especially stubborn, they will die, as she did, tortured, and then all of their eyes will be torn out and hung on the site of their death. She lived this life for 10 years when one night someone showed a tall, dark figure appeared in the house. Sarah looked at his head, which was white as snow and contained no face. "Come, Sarah, join us." Sarah knit her eyebrows. "Us?" Sarah knit her eyebrows. "Us?" He nodded. "The proxies."